Okay, so today I'm going to teach you how to create a chatbot that uses OpenAI and ChatGPT4 and integrate it inside your Bubble application with no code. So, any further ado, let's dive into it. We're going to be using flowise to create the chat functionality and integrate it via the API with Bubble. Flowise is a no-code tool that allows us to create advanced chatbots and AI automation without writing a line of code. And the best thing is not just that it's open source, but is that you can host it in your own hosting like AWS, Render, Azure, etc. For setting up Flowise, I really recommend the channel of Leon and this playlist in where he explains all of the functionalities of flowise and dive into it a lot more. In this video, I will assume that you already have flowise installed in your host service and you have the application set up for working. So the first thing is to create a new chat flow. Let's click add new, and we're going to add first of all a chain, a conversational chain. This conversational chain needs a chat model and a memory. So let's go ahead and click here. Let's add a chat model, search for the OpenAI model. As you can see, we can use a lot of other models like Llama or the OpenAI GPT4, etc. But we are going to use the OpenAI one because it's the most used one. You just have to connect this node with this other node and connect the API from GPT. I have already two API keys. For creating one, you just have to give it a name like tutorial, head to your OpenAI account and to this link. Once you are in this link, you just have to create one, you give it a name and create it. Once created, it will give you the API key. You just copy it, head to your project and paste it. In this case, I'm not going to do that because I have two API keys already created. So I'm going to just select one, select the chat model that you want to use. In this case, I'm going to use ChatGPT4 and the temperature I like to set up in 7. Okay, now just left the memory. So for the memory, you go to the memory section and let's use the buffer memory. You can to integrate other service memories like Redis or Upstash. I'm going to teach how to use this in maybe another video with a more advanced AI implementation with Bubble. But for now, I think that we're going to do well with the buffer memory, and you connect the node from the memory to the node from the conversational chain. And we can change the behavior of the chat with these additional parameters. We have the initial prompt that will influence and determine how the application will behave. For now, just save it. Let's put it tutorial app advisor. Okay, now that we have this saved, this button appeared. Within this, you go to URL. Here is how we are going to call the API and the variables that we will need to send. We are going to go over here later on this video, but right now let's go to Bubble. So once in Bubble, you are going to go to the page you want to integrate with the chatbot. For now, I'm going to use the landing page I am recreating for my agency. The first thing we're going to need to do is to create a floating group, and this group is going to be at the bottom and at the right. I'm going to set 30 pixels as margin and 30 pixels in the right, and this is going to be 50 by 50, and inside this group I'm going to put an icon. Okay, this icon is going to be centered. And for the background color, I'm going to set this color, the roundness of 10 pixels. This is going to be fit to the content, 10 pixels of padding, and the icon will be, let's put this one in white, and that's it for this button. This button is going to serve us to click and pop up the chat that we are going to integrate inside this landing page. For that, we have to create other floating group This floating group is going to be at the bottom and at the right too, but in this case we are going to set it to a maximum width of 550. We're going to set a padding of 20 in every side, and let's create two groups. In the first group we're going to put the title and the close button. Let's put this as chat. Let's apply a gap between elements of 10 pixels, and this other group will be where our chat is going to live in. Okay, so inside this group we're going to create other two groups. Let's duplicate it. In one we are going to have the chat history, and in the other one we're going to have the input and the send button. Before we continue, let's put here independent roundness and the top left corner of 20 pixels. Okay, so regarding to this group, we're going to set a roundness of 10. To set a background, you can set it at your taste. Let's set the padding at 10 pixels in every side. Inside this group, we're going to create a group that will be the first message that the user will see. You can set it the background to your taste, and I'm going to set the roundness on 10. Now let's put a text inside this group, and let's set the group padding at 10 pixels too. Okay, the text color will be white, and basically put something that will make the user understand what he can expect to do with this chat. In this case, I'm going to create a chat that is going to give advice to the user on how we can help him with the creation of his bubble application. I have a message already created that is saying, "Hi, describe your project," and I will say you how we can help you. And I'm going to set the maximum width at 60%. Okay, and for the repeating group, we're going to have to install a plugin called repeating group to chat, reverse RG. So go to add plugins and search for chat, and you're going to find this plugin. Just install it, it is free. And once you have installed this plugin, you just have to put it in here. I like to put it outside the box, and let's put a repeating group in here. So this element works by giving him the repeating groups that it is going to affect. So in this example, I'm just going to have one repeating group, and I'm going to put it the same ID. So for the repeating group, you go down and put the same ID. This way, this repeating group is going to behave as a chat in which you scroll up instead of scrolling down like in a social media feed. Okay, I don't want it to fit with to content. I want it to fill the further element space. And for every message, I am going to add a text here. I'm going to put it with 10 pixels of padding in every side, and the maximum width will be 60%. I'm going to set the same background color and the same font color. Okay, regarding to the type of content, we're going to create two data types. One that is a conversation, and the second one is a message. Every message will be associated with one conversation, so that we can do a search here for every message that is in one conversation. So let's go ahead to data, and I'm going to replicate these two data types. In this case, I'm going to put tutorial conversations and tutorial messages. For the conversation, we're going to create a field that is going to save the session ID that we're going to use when we connect with the API. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it in here. It's going to be just text, and that's it for conversation. For the messages, we're going to have three fields. One is the conversation associated with that message. The second is the text message, that is going to be the message either the user sent or OpenAI respond to us. And the creator is to distinguish within the messages that the user sent or the messages that OpenAI generated. So let's go ahead and create these fields in here. Conversation, third conversation, creator, and the text message. Okay, now that we have this, we can set the type of content to message, tutorial message, and it's going to do a search for messages. We need to specify from what conversation are these messages from. So let's set the conversation equals to, and we didn't have this already created, so let's create a place where we're going to save the conversation. Conversation. Let's copy the name of this group, and now we're going to reference that custom state. Okay, we're going to sort by credit date, and let's set this to yes, and let's change this to the current sales message, text message, and by default I want this to be set it to the left. Okay, and we're going to give it 10 pixels at the bottom. Now we're going to add a multi-line input to this group, and let's set this group as a row. Now let's create the button that is going to allow the user to send the text that they put in the input. So let's add a group, and inside that group an icon. I like to use a lot the Google icons. Now set the size of the button to 40 by 40, and the group will have a padding of 10 in every side. You can choose whatever color you want to the background. I like to use blue, and you have to center the button and the multi-line input too. Let's set a space between elements of 10 pixels. Now let's set the min height of 50 pixels and the max height of 500 pixels. And for the padding, I'm going to set the left one at 15 pixels. Let's put a placeholder. I forgot to remove the border lines, so I'm going to remove it for it to look more clean. And now we have a better looking chat. Regarding to the API connection, we will need to set two API calls. So you have to go to the plugin section, and if you don't have it already installed, you have to install this plugin that is the API connector. I have it already installed, so I don't have to do it again. Once installed, it is going to appear in the list of installed plugins. Okay, and here is where the magic goes. We're going to create another API and name it as you want. I'm going to name it as flowise tutorial. And here we're going to create two API calls. One is already created when you create a new API, and I am going to create other one. The first one is start conversation, and the second one will be continue conversation. Okay, let's set this one as post, the second one too, and this is going to be used as an action in both of them. You have to set it as an action because if not, you are not going to be able to use it in the workflows. In this field, we have to copy and paste the URL that Flowise give us. So let's jump to Flowise, click here, go to Cure, copy and paste this link. Back in our application, we paste that link here and here. And we need to add a header in both API calls and copy and paste this. Here you paste this and here too. And the value will be application JSON. Copy and paste it. Okay, regarding to the body, you just have to write this. I just copy and paste it from an example I did before. And with this, I have a variable value. I'm going to uncheck this checkbox and to put any value like hi. And in order to be able to use this API call, I have to initialize it before I can use it in my application. So I'm going to do this. And it's important that you copy and paste this session ID that Flowise gives you. This is a unique identifier for the conversation that you are having with Flowise, and is going to serve you to continue with a conversation without initializing every time a new conversation, every time you call the API. And for the body of the continue conversation API call, you just copy and paste this code. This is going to give us two variable values. Uncheck this couple of checkboxes, code this value, and paste it in session ID. And for continuing with the conversation that we initialized in this API call, I can say, hey, I want to create a no-code app. Let's initialize it. And with this, we are all set up for continuing with our application. So I'm going to add a workflow to this button. And this workflow is only going to be initialized when the floating group B conversation is empty. Because when it's not empty is because we already initialized a conversation before. Okay, we're going to create a new conversation. Let's create a new message too with 3 variables. The first one is the conversation, the creator, and the text message. The conversation is going to be the result of step 1. The creator is going to be arbitrary text, human. And the text message is going to be from the multi-line input value. We're going to reset relevant values. And let's set the custom state from the floating group. Floating group E. The conversation is going to be the step 1. Now we're going to use the API calls that we already created. They are going to appear here in plugins. You just search for the one that you just created. In this case, Flowise tutorial, start conversation. And the message will be from the multi-line input value. Until this is step number 5, Bubble is going to call the API call and wait until the API gives Bubble a response. So in the next step, we're going to use that response and store the unique ID for the conversation. So we're going to make changes to a thing, the result of the first step. We're going to set the session ID as the result of step 5, session ID. Now we have a way to know what is the conversation that we initialize with flowise, and we can continue with that conversation. Later we create a new message, but this time is the message that flowise gave us. In this case, the conversation is the result of step 1. The text message is the result of step 5, text. And because we set it as default the value of machine for creator, we don't have to set this. We can just leave it as it is. And that's all for the workflow to initialize the conversation. Now we're going to create the workflow to continue with the conversation. Copy and paste this one. But in this case, it's not going to be when this custom state is empty, but when it's not empty. This time we don't need the conversation, and in this value we're going to say the custom state from the floating group B. We can leave this workflow as it is and delete this workflow because now we need to initialize the other API call that is to continue with the conversation. Now the message will be the multi-line input value, and the session ID will be from the floating group conversation session ID. Okay. Now we delete this one too. We create a new conversation, but this time is the result of step 3, and the conversation is from the floating group custom state conversation. Okay. And we are all set up with this workflow too. Now let's make some changes to our messages. Let's add a conditional when this message creator is human. Let's set the horizontal alignment to the left and the background color as white and the font color as black. Now we need to have a way to call this pop-up. So I'm going to set this as not element with the pages load, and to hide this element, and to set a workflow to this one to show the floating group B. Okay, I'm going to set a conditional that when the floating group B is visible, this element is invisible. Okay, and let's add other workflow to this one to hide this pop-up. Let's hide this pop-up floating group B. Okay, I think that now we can test it. Let's do this. Okay, let's say hi, how are you? Okay, and it gave me a response, but we need to hide this message when flowise responds to us. So I'm going to set a conditional class when hidden when the floating group B conversation is not empty, this element is invisible. So now if we reload this again, we're going to send other message to test if it works. Okay, it works properly. Perfect. Now I'm going to create a glassy effect like this one, and to create this animation that shows like it's charging. So let's do that. For the animation, we're going to need a plugin called CSS Tools. So you just search for CSS Tools and install it. And for the animations, we're going to need this plugin called Lottie Files. Once you have that plugins installed, you just have to create a new workflow when the page is loaded. And let's add other action. In plugins, you go to this one that is add and edit head tags. And here you can type any code that you want to include. I'm going to copy and paste this code that I had already created, and I'm going to add it in the description so that you can copy and paste the code. Now we have to copy and paste one of these IDs and put them on the elements that we want to apply that glass effect. So in here I already have it pasted, and in this one I'm going to paste it too. And for it to be applied, you have to put some opacity on the elements. So in this one I'm going to set 20%, and in these other ones I'm going to set 80%, and in here 80% too. So now if we reload the application, we can see that it has the glassy effect. Now for adding that animation, you need to have an account in Lottie. So go to lottie.com and create an account. Once you have an account created, you can go and search any kind of animations, for example, I don't know, lines. In this case, I'm going to use this animation. You can just select the one that you like the most. And the good thing about Lottie is that you can customize the colors that have the animation. So in this example, I'm going to use the colors of my company and save to the workspace. You select your workspace, save it, and once it is saved, you just have to go here, enable this, copy this link, and let's go to our application editor. You can search here Lottie files and include it in the project. Let's put it as make last, and in here you just put the link. Let's uncheck this, and now the animation is running. We can validate it in here, but we want this to be visible just when flowise is generated the message. So for that, we're going to set the type of content of this group as number, and let's change the workflows that I activate this button. So the first one is when we start the conversation. After this action, we're going to display data in that group. So let's go to element action, display data. The data is in the group number, and the number will be this group number plus 1. And we're going to copy this and paste it at the end. Let's do the same on the workflow that continued the conversation. Let's do that after reset the relevant inputs. So I'm going to paste it here and put it after the reset, and at the end I'm going to put it too. Now we're going to set a condition for the animation that is just going to be shown when the number is 1 or when it's an odd number. So let's add the condition when the group number is 1, or when the group number modulo 2 isn't 0, is not 0. Now let's set this as visible when these either of these conditions are true, and in the layout assure that this element isn't visible on page load, and collapse when hidden. So let's try it out, and we can confirm that it is working. Hi. As you see, the animation is shown. Okay. If you want to create an app that can be built with Bubble All you need to have AI functionalities, you can reach me out and I can help you. And that is it. Now you know how to include an app inside your application, and the only limit is your imagination. Bye!